Welcome to She Plays Weekly. I'm Preston Bradsher. Let's get right into what's happening in women's sports this week. Carly Lloyd got her 300th cap for the U.S. women's national team this week, and she's only the third player in history to make it that far. It's pretty much the most exclusive club I can think of. More people have walked on the moon than have gotten to 300 caps. 12, by the way. It's 12 people. All men, obviously, but you knew that. The WNBA draft was tonight, and full disclosure, we shoot on Wednesdays, so I can't tell you what happened. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say congrats to Dallas on Charlie Collier and or Awak Kawir and or Ari McDonald. Love that for you, but you'll still never make me go to Dallas. Nice try. The opening games for the NWSL Challenge Cup gave us a lot of excitement over the weekend. Louisville proved themselves more than worthy of an NWSL team and brought insane energy, while in Portland, the ref gave out 4 red cards just so she could watch the world burn. Hope Troutwine pitched a perfect game for North Texas on Sunday, and I mean truly perfect. She struck out every single batter. I called it a perfect game, but actually there isn't even a name for this. Nobody's ever done it before in NCAA softball history. Do we think the rest of the team just went for coffee somewhere around the 3rd inning? You got this covered, right? Okay, bye, back in a bit. A U.S. soccer settlement about equal working conditions for the men's and women's teams was approved this week. So now the women's team is moving on to appeal for equal pay. U.S. Soccer released a statement in response where they tried to say that there already is equal pay, which takes less than one Google search to disprove. So, watch out for their press release next week announcing the men's Olympic roster. Carissa Moore of Hawaii made herself #1 in the world this week when she landed a super rare air reverse to win the Rip Curl Newcastle Cup. I looked this trick up and it's insane. It's basically a 360 in the air, which is cool for a skateboarder, but she's jumping off of the water. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess that's why she's an Olympian and I can hardly be trusted on a boogie board. And finally, in completely true and not at all fictional news, the NCAA did something right this week. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. They announced that they won't hold championships in states that have legislation against transgender athletes. States who have their tournaments canceled will miss out on a lot of money, but they will receive a consolation gift bag. Wait, no. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. All right, we got a great show for you tonight. Tony from NWSL Analitica is here. Plus, we'll talk about one of the best sports dudes out there. But before we get to that, Katie Ledecky made a big splash this weekend at the TYR Pro Swim Series. Somehow she's gotten better in this weird COVID break and is still showing everybody up. For more on that, let's take a deep dive. Katie Ledecky has 5 Olympic gold medals and 15 from World Championships. That's the most in history for any female swimmer. She currently holds the records for the 400, 800, and 1500 meter freestyle, and also has the most individual event world titles among female swimmers. At this point, I'm not sure if Ledecky is a professional swimmer or a professional record breaker. This woman wins races the way I pet dogs. Every time I see one, and with as much intensity as possible. She did have a training partner, but for almost all of 2020, she pretty much just raced herself, trying to catch her own records and prepare for the Olympics. And what better way to prepare for the Olympics than to race the best swimmer in the world, even when that swimmer is yourself. With the Olympics coming up, it was time for the athletes to get back in the pool and get their kinks out, but as we've seen so far this year, Katie Ledecky doesn't seem to have any kinks. Back in March, she raced her first full meet in a year and won by 21 seconds. And this week, she blew everyone out of the water again, pun very much intended. At the TYR Pro Swim Series meet on Saturday, Ledecky swam her fastest 400-meter freestyle since August of 2018. It was the 25th time a woman has broken 4 minutes in the 400 free, and 20 of those times were by Katie Ledecky herself. Ledecky followed her win in the 400 free with her second fastest time ever in the 200 free. Her time was the fastest this year, coming in at 1:54.40. That's less than 2 seconds under the world record held by Federica Pellegrini, and it ties the U.S. Open record. Clearly, Ledecky isn't worried about pacing herself. Following her 2 wins on Saturday, Ledecky won the 1,500-meter freestyle by a landslide on Sunday. Literally, an entire landslide could have happened during her lead. After lapping someone, she finished a whole 26 seconds ahead of the next person. Just to give you a sense of how huge a 26-second lead is, and to tell on myself big time, 26 seconds is how long it takes to do the entire hoedown throwdown. Not that I'd know. Or if you're Katie Ledecky, you could just patiently wait at the end of the pool. 26 seconds! That's almost half a minute. Swim races are usually pretty tight, like decided by tenths of a second tight, but this race was just mind blowingly dominated by Ledecky. In fact, the next fastest time in the world this year was only 15:57:03, which still gives Ledecky a full 17-second lead. That's a hell of a buffer going into the Olympics, and though it doesn't seem like she needs it, it'll give her a little breathing room as she plots for total domination. That's got to be next, right? Like, I don't see where else she goes from here. Katie Ledecky has only lost one 1,500-meter freestyle race in her life, back in 2010 when she was only 13 years old. And now she holds the 10 fastest times in the event. I was bad at lots of things when I was 13. Dancing in public, not having acne, self confidence. But I didn't, go to the Olympics for any of that. So at this point, Ledecky is truly only racing herself, which is good because a race against anybody else would just be unfair. That was your deep dive. We will be right back with Tony from NWSL Analitica. Our guest tonight is the founder of NWSL Analitica and the best soccer analytics teacher you could ever want. Tony, how are you?
Oh, thank you for that. Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You're coming to us from where?
Buenos Aires. That's in Argentina. For those that doesn't know, I suppose everybody knows, but cannot be too sure, I suppose.
You never know. It's our first international guest. It's a big deal. Crazy.
Actually, flatter.
You run the Twitter account NWSL Analytica, which, to be honest, is how I know just about everything I do know about soccer analytics. I know because of that Twitter account, aka I don't know very much. But I'm working on it, thanks to you. Can you just tell me a little bit about that? How that got started?
Sure. This tracks back around 2014, I suppose. I had another Twitter account which was in Spanish about Argentinian football. That I did something similar, but looking back at it, I feel a little bit bad because it could have been better. I learned so much in this like 4 or 5 years. Um, Not only about Twitter itself, but about football. Um, my knowledge has been grown. So that's when mostly my interested in trying to mix social media with analytics and trying to do tactical analysis and data analysis. Started around that time. A year later, um, when I decided to stop using that account and stop doing that, um, I started watching basically women's football, which was my introduction was the FIBA World Cup in 2015, the Canada World Cup. And with the growth of women's football, that I thought it's important to support, and I was thinking about that. How can I do something about it? So we came up with choosing a league, which was the WSL. Then stuff happened, and trying to do as much leagues and games as I can. But I try to focus on that league because it's probably the league with the more public available data um, on the internet, especially on the official website. So I said, okay, this is a good starting point. I'm gonna try to go this way, and then the rest is history, I suppose.
Yeah. So can you just, for people that don't know your account, it's great. There's lots of like diagrams, which I'm visual. I find that really helpful. Could you just give us like just a super quick like snapshot of the type of stuff that you do, the type of
Mm,
you try to find?
okay, I think you're asking a little bit too for a lot, but I I mean my goal with the account is not only to show a different way to get information about the games for the players, but also what I want to do is to make easily accessible for people that doesn't know a lot about football how tactics works. For example, I want to make it super easy. I ask like when someone asks me something, I'm really happy because I get my time to explain or try to do my best to make everyone understand what's going on and not only think, okay, this is a goal and that's it. I try to use videos, I try to use graphics, like you said, and that's basically what I try to do, like or my goal.
Yeah.
try to make um, tactics available to everyone without having to read a big book or watch a half an hour video on YouTube.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like it's very accessible. Like you do a good job of kind of keeping it at a level that your average Joe can understand at least a little bit. And we are going to we're going to get a little bit deeper into analytics here with Tony in a minute, because how could we have him on and not use that expertise, because he's on top of it. Just one more question before we get to that. What
Sure.
are your hopes for, like, what would you like to do in the future in the soccer world?
Um, I'm getting into that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I do have a role in the scouting network, the Houston Dash, and I'm also working as the video analyst of an Argentinian team, uh,
That's
a
awesome.
professional one. So yeah, I'm that was part of the idea with the Twitter account, like putting my foot on the door, showing what I can do, um, and trying to showcase. I don't want to call them abilities, but
Yeah.
what I can do, and if someone was interested to do something about it, and basically both roles came that way, came because I made a public what I can do, and for anyone out there that it's doubting to do that, please do so, because it's a good platform. If you can use social media right, you can go anywhere. Um, and this is like a small sample because I didn't go like super far. um, but it's a path that I wanted to move up and try to go. And I'm doing that, which is makes me really happy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, that's amazing. But we're going to be back a little bit later. We're going to have some more from Tony, and we're going to get into soccer analytics for real in a minute here. But just stick around. We'll be right back. We talk a lot on this show about men who don't know how to act about women's sports, but we also want to give props to the guys who are getting it right. Men who support women's sports are my favorite, and we want to encourage good behavior, so let's give a shout out to one of the good ones in a segment we call Attaboy. If you're like me, you might not think all that much about men's sports, so let me give you a new favorite male athlete, JJ Watt. I'm not even going to get into his stats because you have Google, but I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why you should love this man. Let me just give you the highlights. Okay, first of all, yes, he's good at football. We love that. He's a defensive end who played for the Houston Texans until this year, and now he's heading to the Arizona Cardinals. Every team in the country was fighting over him when he announced he was changing teams, and Arizona pretty much won the lottery because he is a total game changer for whatever team he's on. But enough football. There is so much more to talk about. Okay, he is married to Keelia Watt of the Chicago Red Stars, which is obviously a huge win in itself, and he knows it. When they got married last year, he wore a shirt that had Mr. Keelia Watt embroidered on it, which is correct. He knows her value, and he is not afraid to let other people know it too. When a Houston news outlet reported that the Houston Dash had traded JJ Watt's fiance to Chicago, he responded how any decent man would. He called it trash. Not only does this man promote his wife's career, they are the cutest family, and don't get me started on their dogs. Their names are Tex and Finley, and during the NCAA tournament, they had a game of fetch to predict the winner of the North Carolina-Wisconsin game. And yes, they got it right. Of course they got it right. JJ Watt's support stretches way beyond his family, though. He's become a real advocate for women's sports in general. He was on Twitter throughout the NCAA tournament talking about the games like someone who is truly invested. He posted a picture of himself to promote the start of the NWSL Challenge Cup last week, wearing an NWSL Pride shirt, no less. It's like he knows me. Watt expressed interest in buying an NWSL team when Del Boy Hansen was ousted last year as owner of the Utah Royals. That didn't happen, but I feel like it's just a matter of time. Clearly, he has the money and the sense to see the value of owning a team, so I'm just waiting for him to come through for me here. He also expanded his partnership with Reebok last year to create a training shoe for women that was designed alongside Keelia Watt. And they're not bad. Not that anyone has ever wanted my opinion on sneakers ever, but what's even better, though, is that for each pair they sold, another pair was donated to the Yahweh Women's Shelter in Houston. And I'm not done, folks. Watt has a charitable foundation, appropriately named the JJ Watt Foundation, that provides sports equipment to middle school aged kids across the country. They've donated over $6 million so far. And when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, he pivoted to helping relief efforts down there. Oh, also, did I mention his mom is the vice president of the foundation? It's cute. You can't tell me that's not cute. And if that somehow still isn't enough to get you on Team Watt, here's my very favorite thing. He hosted SNL back in 2020, and he was the first football player to host since Eli Manning in 2012. So, right off the bat, a lot of confidence in him here. Athletes on SNL are notorious for being not great, but he was so fun. The man was committed. They had him playing Kristoff from Frozen, a deeply stupid bachelor, and Bigfoot in a questionable My Fair Lady parody, and he made them all work. I love a man who's game, and he was clearly up for anything, so he's got my respect for life. So, JJ Watt, what more can I say? You've got some big fans here at She Plays Weekly. Now go buy some women's teams. That was Attaboy. We will be right back with more from Tony from NWSL Analitica. All right, we're back with Tony from NWSL Analitica. So, Tony, you are a real master when it comes to soccer analytics, as far as I know. I mean, if you aren't, don't tell me, because you got me fooled. To be honest with you, like I said, most of what I know about it, I've learned from you on Twitter, and you're clearly super passionate about it. And we have a segment on this show where we just like to give passionate people a chance to talk about their favorite things. So I'd love to get into soccer analytics with you now in a segment that we call Nerd Out.
Cool. For a second, when you said something about passionate about, I thought I had a chance to talk about Doctor Who. But if you want me to talk about analytics,
that's
I'll do it.
Next show we'll do Doctor Who. This one,
okay, cool.
We'll do soccer analytics. You got to come back on just for that. All right, so I'm just gonna ask you a few questions and let you do your thing, because you're the one who knows what's going on here. First of all, why soccer analytics? Why should people care about that?
I think people should care because it's a very interesting tool to have a different way to understand the game. I know in the United States it's like a big thing. Stats are a big thing, especially in other sports like baseball, basketball, or American football. And trying to take that out and put it on soccer or football, like I like to call it. It just gives you another way to understand the game in a different level. There's not just about, okay, these are a couple of good passes and a good shot and a goal. And it gives you another insight or about how everything works, about how tactics are implemented and what's the idea behind every team, and trying to find out different patterns, which is basically your goal to anyone that thinking about it. If you want to do a video analysis for a team, your goal is to find patterns within the play of the teams.
That's awesome. And just to like give us some of the very basics, like what would you say are the main things that you look for in analytics? Like you said, outside of just goals and assists, what would you tell a beginner here?
Oh, okay. That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
I think that most people will look into passes. It became kind of a thing, trying to look into passes and passing accuracy. People are a little bit obsessed about that, and I don't think it's. I agree with that sentiment. But what I think you should look at it's mainly trying to give a context to what you're looking at. If you're watching a game and you think a team likes to do long balls or trying to do a lot of long balls, you will try to check that out. You don't think that, I mean, there's not like an ABC or a 1, 2, 3 number of steps to understand how the game happened, but you try to watch and you try to take from what you're watching different conclusions in your eye test, and then you try to find out which stats can help you to make that eye test either right or wrong. Trying to, I mean, if we want to be a little bit more with an example, if we take an example, if you are obsessed or you like to check only passing accuracy, and you look at the dash, you'll say, okay, this team sucks, but they don't. They won.
They're
So
great.
it's pretty easy to see that. And there's not a correlation. There's no correlation between stats and performances. That's something important. So if you um usually the team with the better stats ended up winning a game, but it's not a long-term thing. You can have bad stats in some areas and some good on other areas, and if it fits your game plan, you're gonna win probably.
Yeah,
So
stats
it's
don't tell the whole story, right? Like they
yeah,
tell
it doesn't.
an
Yeah,
interesting part of the story and one that not everyone pays attention to, but definitely
yeah,
the whole story.
and you learn to not look at it in face value. Like, okay, this is a I have a PDF with different numbers and say, okay, this might tell me what I think the game uh, was played, how the game was played, but in the end, maybe these teams wanted to do what I'm looking at. So I don't think there's like a basic number of or stats that should be checked upon after a game. But I think you should always try to watch the game, make an eye test, maybe write down a couple of ideas you had and try to check out if you are right or wrong. That way you can also find some other things.
Yeah, and it's definitely a great way to find stories that maybe you wouldn't notice otherwise. Like that's what I've learned as I've started to pay a little bit of attention. Like, oh, I didn't notice that player, but like look at all these great passes they had. You kind of learn like these behind the scenes players that maybe aren't scoring goals are a bigger part of the game than you ever realize until you start looking at stats. So it can be really great for that. I'd love to get into one thing that I know was confusing for me, especially when I first started getting into soccer, and honestly, still kind of is. If I'm being real with you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to make that clear finally.
You're here to fix me, and I love it. So formations.
Okay.
My favorite thing that I get confused about every day. On like soccer broadcasts, they're always talking about like, oh, it's a 3-4-1-1-2. That's not a real formation, probably. Or they just give you this string of numbers.
That can work.
Is that real?
I think that can work.
Adds
Yeah.
up to 11, I think, or 10 maybe. But could you just give like for a beginner explainer of what do those numbers mean? What are we talking about? And like, why does it matter? Why is it the different formations? Like, what's the strategy behind choosing those formations?
Sure. Um. Okay. So if this question was asked like 25 years ago, maybe even um further back, formations were super important in the terms of they were not flexible. A team play, I know, 4-4-2, which is probably the most common of formations historically, and you can see all the time a 4-4-2, or like 70% of the time you can see a 4-4-2. Right now, with how soccer has evolved and how things are different, and you try to be as flexible as you can. Um, I think formations are not important. That you shouldn't think about positions and formations, but more about roles.
Hmm.
Different players have different roles, even if they on paper play on the same position. So you try to fit your players to the roles that you think are going to be good for your tactic or your game plan.
Formations are like a starting point, right? Like
It's a starting point. Yeah,
it's what we see on paper, we talk about at the beginning of the game, but then what's more important is to watch how they play and see how it develops.
yeah,
Because, like you
yeah.
said,
If
they're
if
not
you
set
can, if you
that
have
are
a wide enough angle and you are in a transitional play, like for example, when a team plays from the back and the defenders trying to pass to the midfielders and build up the game, if you can pause it and try to figure out um, the formations sometimes are really clear on that shots that you can see how the players are scattered around the field of play, and you can have a better idea of what's going on there. And then again comes to roles. It's not the same to play Crystal Dunn than Emily Sonnet as your left back. Like it's
yeah.
completely different. One is more attacking, and it's more other one's more defensive. But I'll have to tell you that's super clear. But then you have little uh, like differences between players that on paper should be on the same position. I mean, the central midfielders of the United States national team also are pretty different between themselves. On theory, Andy Sullivan and Juilliard should play and can play on the same position, but the kind of skills that each of them has are different. I mean, Andy Sullivan likes to be more positional, likes to pass the ball a little bit more, while Juilliard is more of a destroyer. But technically, the two of them are defensive midfielders.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a lot of information to
Yeah.
process. That's
No,
the idea
it's
behind of
great.
how it works.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I feel like what I'm learning here above all is there's a lot to know about it, and it's not one size fits all. It's not, like you said, ABC 1 2 3. It's here's a starting point, like here's a new way to look at the game, but ultimately it's about the players and the individuals and how the different nuances in their play are going to affect their team. So
Yeah,
and analytics are just like a piece to that puzzle, and I feel like you do such a great job with providing that piece. And again, like I said, follow Tony. It's at NWSL Analitica. He also has a Patreon if you want to support his work, which I would highly recommend. Shameless plug here, but thank you so much, Tony, for being on today. That was great. I feel like I learned something this morning.
No, don't worry. Anytime that you want me here, I will be here.
Well, next time we got to talk about Doctor Who, right?
Yeah, that's a promise. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our show, everybody. Like I said, you can find Tony on Twitter at NWSL Analytica, or you can find him on Patreon. And thank you so much for watching She Plays Weekly. We will see you next week.